Okay. Hello, hello, people in the live. Let's see if this is working. Totally. We out here. Thank you. Lyndon, wait. 1 minute countdown. And Uzda's in the chat. Thank you, Uzda, for being here. We will wait a minute because I have a special guest who will also be joining us. So we'll wait just a second. And I need some coffee. So are we psyched to discuss? Are we? I guess that'll kind of be some of the questions. I should have done a countdown. That would have been really fun. Should I still do a countdown? 10 seconds to give some people some time. Ready to discuss? Okay, we'll do like a little 10-second countdown, and then we will get into the book, the movie. Let's give you the rundown, shall we? Okay. Oh, thank you, Brendan. It's a very lovely copy, isn't it? It's a great display piece. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to discuss the book first, and then we're going to discuss kind of the ending of the book. We are going to then move to the movie and kind of compare the movie and the book, and then talk a little about the movie on its own. And then in closing, we're just kind of going to do some questions that I think we'll keep doing throughout all of our book clubs in this fall. Just kind of how we're feeling about the books, them being classics, more to do with that. So stay tuned. We will get into it shortly. Yeah, I feel like this will be a fun discussion, honestly. And if you see my display, my setup here, wait, oh, there we go. The Headless Horseman is behind us. He's prepared. So that will be fun. And also we do have a special little treat for those who attended the first meeting. We have a surprise announcement. So let me do a 10-second countdown to get us all ready. I will talk one more time about like kind of our game plan just for those who are just joining. And then we'll discuss and have a good time. So grab a coffee if you haven't and get excited. Okay. Let's see if I remember how to do this. Let's go. Oh, hello. Fancy seeing you guys here. We are back with it. So someone did mention we have our surprise guest. We have a surprise guest and we have a surprise announcement as well. The guest isn't a surprise. We know he's going to be here. So let's talk really quickly through the game plan one more time. I'll bring in our guest and then we'll start discussing. So if you're here and you don't know what we're doing, we were discussing Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. We were just discussing that story. I did not read the other short stories. We'll chat about if you guys did. And then we'll just discuss the book, and then we'll discuss the ending of this story. We'll talk about the movie and kind of compare the movie, The Sleepy Hollow 1999 with Johnny Depp. We'll compare that to the book a bit, and then we'll also just talk about the movie. We're going to closing notes are going to be about the book club going forward this fall and just talking about what we think about reading these classics, how we're feeling about it, if we're excited for our next book, the whole game plan. So come along with us. I'm excited. Let's bring our guest in the chat. Let's hear some noise in the chat for our special guest, Jacob.
Hello.
Hello, welcome in.
Thank you. I feel like I've got to start by showing off my copy of the book as well, just to give some context. It's not quite as Halloween vibey, but
Okay.
just got the little word
Mhm.
collage almost on the front. It's a style I like. I've got a couple others like that, but
Yeah, it is nice when you have the full set. Honestly, should we make chat like choose their favorite, or are you worried that you'd be
I don't know if we need to go that far. It feels like that could get ugly.
I really do like this one. I found it on Thrift Books if people actually want a spooky copy. That's where I found that. So we have a lot to chat about today. First, what do we want to start? Like, how do you want to get started? How do you want to roll, Mr. Guest?
I think that the setting and kind of the mood of it overall feels like the right spot to start. Reading some questions about it, there's a lot talking about the setting playing into it, and starting even at the title, Legend of Sleepy Hollow. If you have thoughts immediately that come to mind for how that impacts how you read the story, or if that kind of sets a stage for you as you go into it.
Yes, and also in the comments, please comment your opinions on all these questions too, and we will read them as well. The mood and setting of the story, I think you feel right away, especially in the way he kind of introduces the place Sleepy Hollow to you before you actually go into Sleepy Hollow. It has, a reputation that precedes itself a little bit. And like you said, even if you see a cover like this or you hear the name, I feel like it's very atmospheric. And I would say this might be dipping into other questions for later, but I think that was one of my favorite parts of the book was actually like the atmosphere that it created.
Yeah, I really like that first page description of the town, and there's a different name for the town that he presents at the very beginning, and then it immediately gets discarded as actually you just kind of people are tarrying around. It very much changes how you are viewing the people as a whole.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is a good. I'll have to pull up the start here, but I like that characterization of it at the very beginning.
And also at the beginning, I do like how it says it's like found among these papers from this late person. I just feel like the tone is immediately set well.
Yeah. There were a couple of references to the war also, and I felt like I had to go and contextualize when is this set. And I think the war they're talking about is the Revolutionary War. So this is like early 1800s. That was how I was reading it anyway.
I think it was published, am I right, 1812? 1821, maybe? Maybe I'm feeling dyslexic.
Somewhere in that ballpark, yeah.
Somewhere in there. I don't know if it says. But that definitely impacted some of my reading of it. Well, let's see what people have to say, actually. People might know better than us. Love the Jacob cameo. Me too. It's easier to have a conversation with another person than myself. Really more of a feature. He's our featured guest? Is that what you mean?
The events. Brennan said 30 years before for the events versus the publishing.
Oh.
So I think that makes sense, it being Revolutionary War, and that checks out.
Oh, they say the events were 30 years before. Okay.
We got to get Brendan in here. He knows no more about it than we do.
Yeah, we'll have to see. That would be a cameo.
Cameo in. How about the aspect of it where it's called, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, where then it's, a little bit mystical and some spookiness to it, but having it presented as a legend, does that change maybe your mindset going into it?
Yeah, I think it does make it feel more like almost fairy tale-esque. And to me, one of the biggest themes I thought of is how we share stories and how we perceive things and how that carries through. This is broad picture, you guys, sorry, I'm going broad. But how superstitions become superstitions, and how we share stories and how we kind of are creative in our right as people, what we think happened or what we think it means. Yeah, that's kind of what it made me think of, is this legendary thing.
Do you feel like you are superstitious? Like, do you believe in if you're in this setting, are you someone who's believing in the headless horseman as a, you know,
Okay, well,
one
this was
person, or is it a spooky mystical being?
okay. For this, what the biggest takeaway for me, I feel like, was the idea of when you go somewhere that is supposed to be haunted, or it's supposed to be scary. Like, you go to a haunted house, they're like, look, this happened here. This is haunted. Suddenly you feel like it's haunted because people have these stories about it. But does that mean it's actually haunted? Or does that mean like this story just like, fuels that or makes you think that way? So that's like was my big takeaway, because I'm like, well, I don't want to jump to the end, but like, are things happening, or is it superstition? Is it these legends are leading to them feeling like things are happening?
I think that kind of goes back to the setting and environment, though, too. That if you're in this little sleepy community and everybody's attributing this to, the mystical horseman, it builds into what your surroundings are so much that you start to believe that because there's not another explanation that really makes sense.
In the chats, let us know. Are you superstitious or not? I feel like that's a good question. So I don't know if I'm superstitious. I think given the right environment, yeah, I think the way you feel about things and how you feel like they're happening can sometimes, like, I feel like that makes more sense, that you've like scared yourself, or like it's the right recipe to feel that way. Do I necessarily think like those things are always real? I don't know.
I think I agree with that. I mean, to like take it to the do you believe in ghosts type question, I would say generally no. But at the same time, if I was in an environment where something felt a little eerie, I'm not going to do something to upset the ghosts. I'm not going to go that far.
I'm not going to say
I
they're
don't know the wrong
not.
answers, but as a generalization, I'd say probably not.
Yeah. But I think that is another thing the story does well. It's kind of, you're given this perfect character for this kind of spooky story. Actually, we can talk about that because we wanted to discuss. Oh, wait, let me see if anyone said if they were superstitious. And then we'll talk about if anyone has thoughts on Ichabod Crane generally as our character, kind of our hero protagonist in this story. He's who we're following. How do you feel like he did? What do you think of how he impacted the tone of the story? Yeah, you guys have thoughts about that too. Brendan, I am not superstitious, but put me in the woods at night and I answer my
Exactly. You're not superstitious, but you're not going to be wrong. Like, you're not.
I'm a little
Don't risk it.
Yeah, I'm a little stitious. I don't want to tempt the fates, but
Exactly.
yeah, I feel like that's fair. Anyone else superstitious or have thoughts on that before we talk a little more about Ichabod specifically? We'll see.
Do you think, I mean, to continue on the superstitious, do you think the story works if Ichabod isn't superstitious?
No.
I don't think so either. You
Yeah.
need someone to buy into it and believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And from the very beginning, I was highlighting some parts in the book. Let me see if I can just quickly find it. But like immediately, because you already kind of, it's such a, what am I saying? Like, not a Tory story, but like everyone knows the Headless Horseman, right? Like, we know kind of the idea of it from the beginning when it's talking about how Ichabod is superstitious and stuff. And I'm like, I know exactly how this is going to go, because we've already been given characteristics of him.
Were you familiar with the story before reading it? Have you read other or seen other adaptations?
So I do want us to talk about one adaptation. I'd seen the cartoon that Disney did a long time ago. That was Ichabod Crane and Mr. Toad was also in there. I think it was two different ones, but okay. I think that's the only thing I've seen. And then when I was really young, I went to a sleepover party on Halloween and we watched a movie that was definitely not our age group, PG-13 or R. And we were like 9, 10. And it was a Headless Horseman one. And I was shaking in my boots. I did not sleep a wink that night. So I've seen things here and there, but I've never dived into it like I did for the book club.
Fair. I'm kind of in the same boat. I'd read the Great Illustrated Classic version of it, but when you're abridging a story that's only 30 pages to start with, I'm sure there's some detail left out. But as I was reading through this time, kept having those flashbacks like, oh, this feels familiar. Or, I recognize this character name. So a little bit of familiarity, but not a lot.
Yeah, I know. It is funny because it's like a story you feel like you know a little bit. I think just because of its reach, but yeah, I didn't know nearly as much as I thought I did. Okay. Oh yeah, I was just thinking page 7, they talk about how every sound of nature at the witching hour fluttered his excited imagination. So I was like, yeah, he's the perfect candidate.
The perfect candidate. I don't know though. I feel like with the community and the way that everybody's viewing it, you almost could have had anybody in that community in this situation.
Yeah.
And have it happen.
Yeah. Like you said, you know, if the community believes in this thing and everyone kind of, you know, attributes things to this character, like why wouldn't you also feel the same?
I do love that witching hour phrasing though.
I will say he does have some phrasing that I was like, wow, like that's just so like perfectly put, you know?
Yeah, really good, you know, descriptive like imagery.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. At what point do tall tales become superstition? It seems like a lot of the story was people telling tales to pass the time. No iPhones to keep you occupied. I mean, that did happen in the story, right? They're talking and what is his name?
The
tough
other
guy that he's competing
Brom.
with. Brom is like telling this like very elaborate tale of his run-in with the Headless Horseman, where you're like, okay, sure.
I mean, I think, yeah, to Brennan's question, it's telling tales to pass the time, and so for the storytelling element of it, it becomes bigger every time. You know, that you don't have you're not riding away from him, like taking a video back. Like, this was the guy. You know, it's all exaggerated, and so I think anytime you then have somebody new that's to the community, they're just hearing the exaggerated versions of it, and especially for Crane, it's like imaginative anyway. It kind of goes even further.
Yeah, that. But I feel like that's a good point. Like, it's like fishing stories, right? They're like it's a little more elaborate than anything that's ever happened on your fishing boat. And then someone else hears bits of it and they like it. And they kind of, you know, they fuel each other. It's like writing too. So
that's good storytelling. You know,
yeah.
There's no reason to stick to exactly what happened. Don't get bogged down in the details.
I do like that question, Brendan. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an important point, is like storytelling was so important. And how did you learn about things at the time? It's like word of mouth. And he goes to those kind of gossip groups with the wives, right? And he learns all these things. So I feel like that is very interesting and different. Okay. So him as a character, how do people feel about Ichabod specifically as our protagonist? Do you have initial thoughts, Jacob?
I think he is well characterized for the role, because I don't read him as a character that is maybe inspiring confidence. And so to be somebody who is led or misled to believe this story of the horseman, I think works. I like having him be, you know, an academic, even though it's like is imaginative and goes with all this stuff. I think creates a better opportunity, I guess, for some of this to happen than if he was characterized more like Brom is, where Brom, I'm picturing basically Gaston is who I'm picturing for Brom.
No, that's exactly.
It's that character.
It is. I like that you said that you enjoyed him being an academic, because that's something that stood out to me too, is like he's not an unintelligent person, but maybe like he's intelligent, he's well read. It's kind of expanded his imagination too, you know, to like imagine these things could be happening.
Well, there's plenty of educated people who believe in all sorts of paranormal.
Yeah.
I think especially going back to the setting, especially in the Northeast and in those smaller communities like what this is describing, that if that's what everything around you is, it maybe gets tougher and tougher to not believe in that. And so then you just acquire these stories and acquire the superstitions, I suppose.
Yeah. I feel like that is a fun takeaway from this overall, is how stories become more than just a story.
Yeah.
And how they used to be passed around. I think he's a goofy character in a lot of ways, which I like. And I don't know, he's not the typical protagonist that you would have, right? You have someone who's brave or who's gonna, you know, do certain things or have a lot of honor or whatever that you're following. And he is like very normal feeling, and he's like a little goofy, and he is smart, but he doesn't do all these things, you know, well. Like he feels like a real person. I'm like, oh, I can picture him. Yeah.
Some of the description of him also felt almost the way that you draw a caricature. Like everything is exaggerated, and so like even beyond his physical traits, all of his description feels like it goes to an extreme in a way that just again, like it builds into. I don't think this story works with a different character. I don't think you can have Brahm as the protagonist, because if Brahm's the protagonist, at some point there's going to be a scene where he turns and fights the horseman. It's a different story.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's that retelling of it? Now that I said this, somewhere.
If someone's done it. I like his physical description as a scarecrow. I think it really fit the setting, and you can really picture this somewhat goofy guy running for his life from the headless horseman. Yeah, I feel like that imagery is very important to the story. And like you said, you can't have Brahm be that character. You have to have a character that you believe would do exactly what Ichabod did.
But it's a fun twist on who your typical hero is in that case. He's not the hero role, but he's a very, you know, somewhat likable, believable protagonist. I like that element of it a lot.
So another interesting thing about Ichabod was an interesting story point that I didn't know exactly how I felt about it, was his pursuit of what is her name? Katrina. I was like, come on, Grace, get there. Katrina, and like her family, her wealth, her father, you know, it's just a very interesting part of the story that I feel like maybe is very realistic for the time. I rereading was like, oh, like as soon as they introduced her the freshly 18, you know.
No, there were some questionable elements for sure.
It's like, okay.
And then some of when he initially, like, I think when he first goes to their house and like walks inside and they're talking about the different things in the dining room and on the walls and all this, and it's like, well, that was the moment that he knew. It was like once he saw everything that came with the estate, then he was like, now I'm sure.
Yes, and then
I was interested, but now.
Yeah. And then later, I think, didn't he talk about like selling? I might be not remember things, but like selling certain things and like getting to use the money to buy these other parts of land instead of like farming, because he wasn't going to farm. He just had he has like this big imagination of all these things he's going to do with the, you know, with this estate that I'm like, wait, this it still doesn't belong to you at this point. And I did at the time, right? Like whoever she marries is going to run the estate and it's going to be theirs for the time. But yeah, he just had these, I guess I didn't feel like they fit his character as much to me, but maybe I think for the time period it was.
No, I think that maybe is the disconnect that I feel as well. His character the rest of the time feels more whimsical.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow the like pursuit of her estate or her family's estate associated with her felt like it was a disconnect somehow from
Yeah.
He was the rest of the time.
Yeah. I know. It was interesting. It wasn't my favorite part of the story. That was the part I just wanted to be like,
No.
okay, skim, skim, skim.
Let's get back to the horseman.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I mean, I think he might have been doing a good job of describing what that was like at that time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, tough to know as much, but I think you're probably right.
Yeah. And I do feel like Ichabod did have not disdain for the country, but I do think his character kind of thought, well, I'm a little bit better than these country folk.
Yeah, I could see that.
Which is kind of the humor of it in the end, because like he gets scared off by the same thing. Like he's, you know, scared of the same thing they all are. It doesn't help him in those moments, but I do feel like he maybe sees like, well, this is the person with the most money or the most, you know, I don't know, the most current fashion and stuff. Because he also talks about that and talks down kind of on how these people dress and live a little bit compared to where he's from. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting how that
Can we
played
get
out.
description in the book of where he's from?
I think he's from, I might be wrong, but I thought he was from like New York or Connecticut, because they send them out to places to go teach after they learn. So I felt like he was from a bigger city, and he's like, I'm a little smarter, a little more worldly than these people.
I agree, that comes across. I didn't remember the initial piece.
Connecticut. Yeah, I was
like, just fact checking us all over the place.
Thank goodness he's here. Anyone else have feelings on that? We don't have to talk about that more if people don't want to either. That was not my favorite element of this story. It didn't read well.
You mentioned in that him being scared off, which I think jumps well to the end. Do you think that's what happened? He was just scared off? Nice peaceful ending. He just rode off into the sunset.
Well, I just have to like the ending as a whole. I like, and I feel like this is something modern stories do not do as often, is like they leave you room to like wonder. They leave you for your superstitions or your inclinations and feelings after reading it, which I love, because that makes talking about the stories more interesting. When it's left to your imagination. I think he ran away and just didn't come back. I feel like he would be embarrassed and just didn't come back. And he went off and he decided he wouldn't, you know, he would go on with his life doing something else.
So do you think then that the horseman was a mystical thing, or do you think the horseman was a person?
I think it was Brom.
Okay. I agree with the horseman. I think the horseman being Brom. I think he was killed. I think Brom killed him. That's the camp I lean to.
You think so?
I do. Let's get a poll going. How do we start this?
Well, can we do a poll? I actually don't know. I don't know if I can.
I think to your point, though, that part of the appeal or what makes this story really good is the ambiguity that you're left with at the end. And part of what makes it a Halloween story, or a fall spooky story, maybe not spooky, but to that direction, is the fact that it's left unknown. I think the story is worse if it ends either way, whether he leaves or he gets killed. Like, I think it takes away.
Yeah, I do too. I think that because it brings it back to like superstitions and people's retellings of things. Like, not everyone is going to remember it the same way, right? Even with your like friends or whatever, you're gonna be like, no, that's not how that happened. Like, your memory is a little different. And also telling stories and telling tales. Like, I liked how at the end, I think, didn't they say he was like, oh, some say he's like practicing law now, or he's a judge and he's just went on with his life. And then some people are like, no, he definitely did not survive that one.
That maybe is the tall tales and the superstition as well. Do you think that like there have to be multiple versions, or I'm not sure what the question is there, but like tall tales having multiple tellings that kind of add to the lore of it?
I think that brings back, well, one, I think if it's a story that has been around for a long time, you'd be hard pressed to not find different versions, right? Or like people are going to tell slightly different versions of it. But the other part of that, I think, is like bringing back originality a little bit and people having original thoughts and ideas. And it's like, if you're the one getting to tell this story, maybe you want it to end a certain way, or maybe you're going to add extra clues that make people feel like, oh, it was Brahm and he definitely killed him. And maybe you don't explicitly say it, but you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to describe it in these certain ways to make sure people agree with me.
I think that'll be fun when we get to talking through the movie to hear some of the discussion around that.
Yeah. Let's see if anyone would like to weigh in on what they think happened at the end. Like I said, I think it's a more satisfying ending this way than any other way, honestly.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I like that it's a story really about tall tales, and it's ultimately a tall tale being told to our author. Yeah. I know. I like how it was like these papers were found, and yeah, I think it adds to the, who really knows what happened.
It was interesting as well, thinking about the papers being found. There was a point, I think, when he left the party or that event at the end, when right before that final ride, where to find the wording, the author, Irving says something about like, I don't know the details of their exchange, talking about when he went up to say goodbye to Katrina. That, interesting, I think, choice to not write that in. Built in the reader's imagination too, that it's implied that she kind of turned him down and wasn't interested, but we don't know the details of it. And so even from the author's perspective, it has a legend to it. There's unknown.
Yeah. And honestly, he did a great job of making you feel like this story could go multiple ways, because sometimes you get a story and it's too clear that what the author wants you to think. And sometimes I miss like feeling like I get to have a little bit of a decision on how I feel about what I read, instead of them like jackhammering it into your head that like, this is what happened. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? So we can start talking a little about the movie too. Did everyone watch the movie? I'm curious about, Jacob, your thoughts on the movie as a whole. Or do you want to talk about the movie as a whole or the compare first?
I think if I view it as a whole in comparison to the book, I have different thoughts. If I'm viewing it as a standalone, like, it's not a style of movie I liked. I don't think I like Tim Burton movies in general from a personal standpoint. I think they're cool. I mean, he does some fun stuff with them, but it's not a type of movie that I tend to love.
Yeah. Tim Burton film. I did not realize, also going into it, just talking about the movie specifically, how many big actors there are in that movie. Like, I just wasn't expecting it. Johnny Depp, who else? Johnny Depp, like the whole cast from Harry Potter.
Yeah, no, there were a number of people throughout that I was like, wait a second. I know you.
Brennan and I were watching it, and someone would pop up every other minute, and he'd be like, I know him.
Yeah.
There's that guy, and that guy too. A strong cast for the movie, for sure.
Especially for as few characters as there are. Felt like everyone was known. So no, I think for me, overall, the movie was not one that I would watch or necessarily recommend on its own merits, but in reading the story, I do really like then having watched the movie and seeing the choices that were made relative to what the core of the story is.
Yeah.
I guess along those, do you like that the movie picked an ending? It made it unambiguous?
I mean, clearly, as much as I've raved about how I felt about making my own decision, I did not like how they spelled everything out at the end. Because I think, along with setting a very eerie, descriptive scene, having a very interesting hero for this type of story, the ending, you getting to kind of decide and like gives you kind of the chills at the end, right? You're like, what happened? And you kind of have to infer. I think it did a disservice to the story choosing someone But what do you think?
I completely agree. I think it's interesting that they chose for it to be the paranormal route,
Mm-hmm.
because I did think that it took away from the paranormal element by having that be so clear that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
It made it. I think anytime you make something like that known and decided, there's less. Yeah, there's less imagination to it, and that's part of what is fun about that genre as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think I think it took away some of the stronger parts of the story. So the very beginning of the movie, they change things, right? They change Ichabod's
yeah.
not character, but why he's there. He's not a teacher, he's an investigator. So I was like,
Well,
okay, what did you think of that?
they also made him not somebody who just naturally believed in paranormal and witchcraft, and they took that and made it something where he's a believer of science and has his tools.
Yeah.
It's a complete flip from Ichabod in the book.
Yes. Very different in that way. I kind of understood at the beginning them kind of changing why he's there to make that a little more captivating.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't as mad about him going there to investigate something or, work on these cases, but I do think it changed him a lot. And I don't think Johnny Depp looks like an Ichabod Crane to me. I think he is a great actor in it, and I think he does a good job kind of still being a little like creeped out by things and like easily spooked. But I think in my head, I was picturing a very different type of character for Ichabod.
I agree. I think the physical description of him in the book is much. I mean, to Brendan's comments earlier, a lot more scarecrow-like and.
Mm-hmm. I did. So, for those of you who have not watched the cartoon, I actually think the cartoon did an amazing job showing what Ichabod would look like, and I think it was so much closer to the book. So after this, I think it's a short one. If you guys do have like Disney Plus or something, I think it's worth the watch. But yeah, they describe him tall but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, feet that might have served it for shovels. Like he's a very interesting looking character. And I pictured exactly the cartoon when he rides that horse, right? And they talk about his knees kind of just being up by his shoulder almost on this little horse. I pictured the cartoon exactly because I think they kind of nailed his character. So if you guys have the opportunity, I would watch that for like a perfect Ichabod, in my opinion.
I'll have to check that out.
I think it'd be worth the watch, especially after you like have already invested the time in reading it and consuming some stuff about it.
Definitely.
And then Brahm was a bit of a different role.
That's exactly where I was going next. Is you said that you thought from the story that Brahm was the horseman. How do you? My guess is from the rest of this that you didn't like then Brahm being so de-emphasized and dead. Is that accurate?
Exactly, and that's it. Throw a period at the end of that, and that's all. Yeah. I think he was an important character to the book. I think he showed a lot of contrast to Ichabod, and I think that was a good. It really showed who they both were. Yeah, I was disappointed that they kind of made him just like, oh, he's also there and he's kind of irritable, but not really that important. And like I pictured him, like you said, a little more Gaston, a little more thick, out for laughs a little bit. Like he also just wasn't right. And I do think Tim Burton cast very specific people. Like I think he just has a specific look he likes in characters and for his films and vibes, because I think he's looking for specific things. But I think that's hard when you're taking such a like well-known, very descriptive story where it tells you how these people are supposed to look and act down to the the shovel feet. So
Yeah, he almost made Ichabod a stronger character, and more into that standard hero role with him and the kid going out into the woods and
Mhm.
finding the tree. That there was a lot more, direct bravery than what I would have guessed of Ichabod from how he's described in the story.
Yeah. So do you like the movie more if it wasn't in conjunction with the book? Or what do you think? Or you enjoy it more? I don't know.
I like the movie for being able to compare it to the book. If I'm just evaluating the movie on its own, I think I like the story of it fine.
Hmm.
It's not bad. I like the beginning of it. I really like the beginning of it before they make the decision that it's going to be unambiguous and we know what's going on.
Yeah. And then I hate how they had, her do that whole monologue at the end of like, here's why I became evil. And here, they did the villain monologue. I was like, eh.
Did you see that coming? Once we knew that somebody's controlling the horsemen.
No, I didn't see it being her personally. But see, that's why I almost felt like it wasn't as strong, because I'm like, I don't know why I don't really like, they made it too convenient. Well, you took my exact house and I was kicked out by this old guy in the family tree. I'm like, sometimes again, I feel like it was a little too clean cut. And it took away from the intrigue of like who it could be. And then it's like convenient. And her sister's the witch and she kills the witch too. And I don't know. I think
all the answers.
Yeah, it went, like you said, it went very paranormal instead of leaning more into like our own daily superstition, and these like normal, like spooky, eerie feelings that can happen in a place like the woods. So
I think usually I like that in a movie, that if you're going to make decisions about things, tie up all the loose ends and connect it all. But in this sort of story where that ambiguity adds to it, it really, I thought the movie lost a lot of what was good about the book by making all those choices.
And I think I have a hard time tearing my feelings about the movie apart, like putting that apart from how I feel about the book, because I'm so much of a person where like if I start a show and it's too different from the book, I'm like, okay, I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
This is not what I signed up for. But clearly you do have like Tim Burton, who's a very like strong director, strong vision for his work, which I didn't know it was him going into it. So it's, I think it took away from like Irving's story. But let's see how Brendan felt about it. Brendan did not like the movie.
Could you clarify that, Brendan?
Could you clarify?
How do you really feel?
Oh, let's see what he says. Okay. There is literally no mystery at the end. It made the horseman less scary knowing that he was just some dude being controlled by some lady because he wanted to find his head. I think that's a good point. And once he got his head back, I also hated that because I'm like, oh, but you had this spooky image of he's headless. Like, what an iconic, like character, and you're taking that away from him too.
I think it's tough to do some of the, I keep using the word paranormal. I don't know what the better word for it is, but once you're working in that field, it's like, okay, so we have this horseman that rises from the dead without his head. His horse comes also, and he's riding around killing specific people, but he can't just like he can't tell where his head is. I feel like it just gets into a gray area where like you've got to be perfect on how you choose to do this, because there's just so much room for there to be holes in the story.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
There might have been holes in this story.
Brennan also, let's see what he's about this. I didn't like that what they did to Sleepy Hollow in the books. It reads as a quaint, beautiful place, celebrating fall with lots of good food. In the movie, it is gray ghost town with bad weather. See, I think that's that Tim Burton touch that I don't always love.
I do love that Brennan's bringing us, bookends back around to the setting description. We started with that with the book, and we're back here with the movie.
Yeah.
I think that for the movie, we start further into it. The horseman's already out here killing people.
Mm-hmm.
I actually liked the gray.
Did you?
Uh,
You know
which
what I would have liked is, yeah, I feel like I would have liked if the woods were a little gray and scary, and maybe at the witching hour things change. But I loved the description of like the foliage, the leaves on the trees. They do that part, and then like the descriptions of food at the parties, and like we have pumpkin to make these things, and there's this to make this, and like he was so descriptive about like the dancing at the parties, and like it's a little jovial too. It's not all dark in their town, but I wish they would have like kept that creepy element for like that witching hour. Things feel different.
we got a little bit of the more upbeat tone with that party when he first gets there and Katrina kisses him on the cheek. Like there's a little bit of it that is retained, but I definitely see what you're saying.
But I'm a fall lover, so I think that was part of that.
But you're a fall lover in the yellows and oranges category, not the grays. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, now we know.
Sorry to let people down, but I think so. So conclusion thoughts. Does anyone have any like ratings they want to share, or maybe if they prefer the movie or the book? Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jacob? Did you prefer one or the other? Do you have ratings?
Definitely prefer the book. I think I would like even recommend people reading the book. It's not necessarily an easy read. I think I wrote down as I was going through, just wrote down a list of words that I didn't know from it and ended up with 14 or 15. I feel like I generally know words pretty well. So that, maybe that's on me, but there was a lot throughout there that felt like this is a book or a story that's 200 years old. Lo and behold. So I definitely would recommend the book, but maybe the great illustrated version, because that's a good one. I'll tell you that.
I think it is interesting to see where this iconic character comes from.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, like especially when it was written. Like this is such an imaginative story. It's like it stood the test of time. Like maybe just speaking on it as a classic and like why it has. Reading it was a little rough for me. I was trying to read it at night, and I was like nodding. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't read this before bed.
Yep.
I thought at times I really like very descriptive writing, and then at other points I was upset with him for being like, I'm like, can we get on with like a little bit of plot? Like I want a little bit of pacing here, and sure. I don't need to hear about every book on the table. I get the idea. It's a stack of books, right? I don't need to hear what they're all bound with. So I had a tough time with it.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think maybe it's just writing is a little different now than it was at the time. It was more descriptive writing. And it is hard when you don't understand all the words. Like for me, it can take you out of the story, right? When you're like,
yeah,
I don't know that word. I have to go look that up, and then I have to come back and try and piece together where I was again.
Were you looking up words during this one?
I did, yeah. I would so I read part of it here, and then I checked it out on the library app, and you can just click the word and look it up while you're on it.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I tried to do it, and then sometimes that doesn't help. It just pulls you out of the story.
Yeah, I just wrote down the list, but decided I was just going to read past them and figure the context would give me enough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I haven't looked them up still, so if it didn't, I'm unaware. Up to now, it seemed to work okay.
Do you have a rating in mind for it, or did you?
I think I have to rate it separately, like rate it as a classic as opposed to rating it just as a book. But I think as a classic, 4 out of 5. I liked the story. I liked a lot of his imagery, and I liked the ambiguity to it. I don't know necessarily what else I'd be looking for out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's higher. It might be a 4.5. I don't think it's a 5, but I think it's a 4.5.
I think, like you said about it, like rating it specifically as a classic, because it's like if it was written today, I think I'd have more complaints for it as far as like readability and other things you look for. But it is such a richly just like eerie story, so descriptive. And the fact that it has like people still go back to this story, right? And people have created so many different spin-offs from this and like use this character in years and years and years to come. It's so iconic. So I do think it's hard to like not rate it highly. Because originally I was thinking like if I was just rating it, probably a 3. If I was rating it more on its impact and the great parts of it, I would probably say around like a 4, 3.75.
What about the movie?
I had a hard time with the movie because I just felt like it wasn't great actors. I don't think they were well cast. Match the book.
Okay.
I
guess we talked about something Crane. Yeah.
You know, I pictured different types of characters for this type of story. And I think they took away my favorite parts of the story, which were like the fall setting, the ambiguity, and having kind of a goofy main character. Because like they made him Ichabod so serious too. And I didn't picture him as a super serious man.
I agree.
So yeah, I think I was let down by that. Let's see what if anyone else had thoughts. The party in the movie felt so out of place. You're gonna throw a party when 4 of your neighbors have been beheaded the night before 100 yards away. We should have known instantly something was wrong with this town. They're like, oh, the beheading? Yeah. No. Come have some pie. I'd give the book 4 out of 5. So same as you. And then movie 2 out of 5. Oh, I didn't think to rate the movie.
I think the movie's higher than a 2 for me, but I don't know, maybe a 3.
Yeah.
It was one of those that I felt like I could appreciate things about it, but didn't necessarily. It's not a movie I'm going to go rewatch.
Yeah, that's fair. I like this. I do like the setting of the movie for fall. I'll say that actually for like a spooky movie, I don't like that it's in combination with this specific story, if that makes sense. I think if it was its own story, I would have almost enjoyed it more.
You think you would have liked it more if you watched the movie before reading the book?
I think I would have.
I think I would have as well.
Yeah, I think that's hard. But you never know if that's how that's going to go. You know? Oh, sorry if you heard a ding. Okay. Ariana is here. This started at 10. Don't worry, Narni. You're here just in time for the conclusion and the fun surprise. And this is going to stay on the channel. So if you actually want to rewatch, it'll still be here. You might hear a dog tail on the back. Do you hear him?
No.
Darcy's thumping back there. Yep. It's okay, Ariana. You're here now. That's all that matters. Okay. Do you have thoughts on I guess we've rated both of them. Our thoughts overall on them and comparatively. This is our first classic. This is our first book of 3 that we're going to do. Has this made you excited to dig into more? Has it made you nervous? How do you feel going into our next read for October?
The October one's been, put out on the channel, right?
Yes.
I'm not breaking news here. Okay. So I would say I'm excited about it. I like even though there was a lot that I didn't know in terms of the words that were used in this one, I like that writing and that style. I don't know for sure when Dracula is from, but I know it's not a new book. I would say that this one, the story aspect of it definitely makes me more excited going into the next classic. It'll be a big adjustment because we just read a 35 or 40 page book and we're now going to Dracula that's a few hundred.
Yes.
But I do think I'm looking forward to it more, having done that and done this discussion kind of on our thoughts of it.
Yeah. I feel very similarly. I think I'm almost more prepared to go into a longer classic after doing this and being like, okay, I'm not going to fly through a 40-page book from the 1700s or 1800s because, it's so different. I need to be really intentional with my time. So I almost feel more prepared for Dracula and being like, I'm going to set aside more time to consume this and enjoy it than I did for this one. I felt like I almost had to rush myself a little bit because I thought 30 pages, whatever. No, it was not a whatever thing. But I've heard such good things about Dracula. And so Dracula came out, let's see, it was written in 1897. So it's more recent. It's like 100. Is that about 100 years or a little bit more later? I can't remember.
Newer than Sleepy Hollow.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brennan was saying Sleepy Hollow was early 1800s, right? At the events, or 1790.
Maybe he said 17. It might have been 1790. So
like 1790. Okay. So yeah, it's 100 years newer, and I guess we'll find out. It'll be an interesting one to read, but this whole discussion takes me back a little bit to like high school English sort of thing, where you're reading a short story and you go through our questions, but you pick the book out, we pick the questions out. It's a little bit more fun than what I remember of high school English.
You know what I was thinking last night was I was like, I wish we could take an AR test and just get that high from taking our AR test.
Yeah.
I miss
the percentage at the end, your little 10 content questions.
Yes, exactly.
I'll put together a little Google form for Dracula for us, and
that could be really fun. How is everyone else feeling? Or is everybody ready for the next book? Feel more prepared? I'm a little nervous. I will say, just like knowing that I'm going to have to be more intentional with my reading because it is more difficult to read. So I definitely have that in mind. Let's see. Uzda, excited to enter my vampire era with this next book. I am so excited because, like the Headless Horseman, but I would say maybe even more so, more iconic, vampires are so heavily used throughout time, and this is kind of the origin story.
I was going to say, this may be a dumb question, but is that the case? Dracula's the first.
I was about to ask the same thing.
We
will look into that for y'all. Stay on the next meeting. We will discuss the history of vampires a little bit. I think that will be fun. Brendan's ready to go. And Ariana says, I started listening to Dracula and it's good so far. Oh, okay, good. I'm excited.
Is it a good narrator, Ariana?
Yeah, let us know.
Like a voice?
That would
be a good way to approach it. For a classic, I might need to have it in front of me.
I might have to do both. I might try to listen and read together for this one. But I will keep you guys updated on like maybe my Instagram stories on how reading is going for it so that we can all like stay in tune with each other. I think we will be moving to Dracula. Goodbye, Sleepy Hollow. It was a fun ride. Moving to Dracula. I think we will. Oh, do you have yours to show? Show it off. Show it off. There we go.
It's the same style.
They do look nice. And they go together well. It's not like the most amazing audiobook, but definitely engaging enough.
Okay.
So that's good. So going into Dracula, I think we will be doing 2 meetings for it. And obviously, I think this week I will release how much we plan to read for each meeting so you can get going on your reading and get started. And also, if you read more than we meet on the first time, that's fine too. We're just going to talk about half of the book and then the latter half at the end since it's a longer read. And I'm excited about it. If you guys want to do a movie again to go along with it, I haven't looked into,
I'm sure there's lots of adaptations.
Yeah. So if you guys have any thoughts, you can put them in the chat or message me on here or on Instagram, and we can choose an adaptation or something to go along with it. Anything else before a special surprise, Jacob? Have we done all the...
I'm ready for the special announcement.
Okay, special announcement time.
I feel like you should get rid of me on camera, though, so we have a full screen of the announcement here.
Okay. Everyone thank Jacob for being here and reading alongside with us. It's been lovely.
It's been fun, yeah.
Yeah, and more fun to come. So, okay, time for a little surprise. Okay, you guys. This is a treat for the real ones who've been here this whole time. Are we ready? Here he is, you guys. Here he is, the newest member of the family. Yes, he is pint-sized and very important. And he came home yesterday. So be ready to see a lot more content with the wee boy. Here he is. Yeah, be ready to see more content with him. He just woke up. He slept this whole meeting. So now he's like, come on, let's play. He does not have a name. So we definitely need name ideas. We are going to do a Jane Austen name again for him. So he matches Mr. Darcy. But yeah, I will also be vlogging with him and showing his life and, you know, how things are going. But we are tired today. If you've ever had a puppy, it's tiring. Let's see. Yeah, here he is. He's ready to play. He like wants, oh, bless you. He wants Darcy to come back in and play with him. He looks like he just woke up. Yes, he did. He's so cute. Oh my gosh. He's so cute. I love him too. He's just a baby. You guys, this is all of the like endorphins I need. Just staring at this little baby. So not Ichabod as a name. A true contender. Are you a little Ichabod? No, he's too cute. He says he's too cute. Such a cute little man. Yes. Ichabod. Icky for short. This is the worst group chat ever. They're trying to name you terrible names. You gotta tell them you're too cute for those. Should we tell them? Gotta tell them. Have Darcy and him met? Yes, Darcy and him have officially met. Darcy is acting like Mr. Darcy, and he's just like, I could care less about you existing kind of feeling. And he is obsessed with Darcy. He's like, wherever you go, I go. Let's be together. So that's why we're almost leaning towards Bingley, because I feel like he has Bingley's personality, and Darcy obviously has Mr. Darcy's personality. So that's a big contender. They gotta be able to see you. He said, I'm awake though. I gotta do stuff. Yeah. Bingley's a contender. Willoughby's a big contender. Whatever. Knightley came up. There are a lot of Jane Austen names that we could choose between. But I don't know. I don't know what we're going to call you, but we got to figure it out. But yeah, Darcy's tolerating him right now, which I think is honestly good. Hopefully they'll play together soon, but all 2 pounds of him scares the heck out of Darcy. I'm the #1 Bingley advocate. I know, I think it might work because he kind of has the gingery hair too, right? Like he has the right temperament and he's the right color. You guys are just going to be sick of all the puppy content coming your way. Yeah, because our whole lives are going to revolve around you for a bit, huh? But he's doing great so far. It's his 2nd day, so usually puppies warm up after the first like 3 or 4 days, and then they start to get naughty. At first, they're a little shy, so they pretend to be better. So they convince you that they're going to be like the easiest thing in the world. Right. But they're cute and they're worth it. Bingers. Bing-a-ling. I'm going to get your bone so you don't chew on me. Darcy, you're trying to steal his bone. Yeah. The red-brown color. Yeah, it feels right with Mr. Bingley. I know. Oh, he's precious. Well, you guys, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here for this special surprise. It's time for me and him to play a little bit so that he can have another good nap here in an hour, right? He is a great booger cleaner. Oh my God. Oh, not that. See, you guys, he's already being naughty. He's already getting naughty. You want my earring? Thank you all for coming. You guys are going to see so much of him. So don't worry. This is not the end. This is just the very beginning, huh? But let's see. His brother will not come sit with him. Or I'd bring Darcy up here so you could see the boys together. Darcy, come on. Darcy won't come when he's here. Darcy, touch. Touch. Come on. You guys, he's like, I know what you're holding. I won't let him get you, Darcy, if you come up. Okay. We will have to say goodbye with the puppy alone. Let me know your ideas for his little name. And I will see you here soon. Oh, Brendan's going to get him up here. Do you want to be on camera too, Darcy? You and brother? Oh, let's get comments off. Hi. Couple of brothers, huh? Oh, they're like real brothers. They don't actually want to, he doesn't actually want to spend time with him. Do you know, you want to spend time with him, I know. All right, you guys. Talk soon. Have a good rest of your Sunday. And I can't wait to talk Dracula with y'all. Bye.